So I'm Angie Savva. I'm an acupuncturist, a Chinese medicine practitioner, and an IIN health coach. And I specialize in women and children's health. And I love working with women and children to help them feel amazing and live their best lives. And I'll pass over to, and I own the Quan Yin Healing Centre, which is a multidisciplinary natural healing clinic in Springwood, where I work with Anne and a few other wonderful practitioners.
Thank you, Angie. And yes, so I'm Anne Barrett, and I also work from the Quan Yin Healing Centre with Angie, and our businesses complement each other really well. And yeah, so my business is called Empowering Health, and so I help people to identify and release blocks to the health of their emotional balance, their body, their relationships, their business success, and life in general as well, because everything is interrelated. And essentially, we're looking for long-lasting change. And I do this by tailoring unique sessions to each individual, because everybody's unique, everybody's background is unique, the way that they respond to their environment is unique. And I can combine everything that I've learned over the years, including kinesiology, hypnotherapy, mind-body coaching, positive psychology, and lots of energetic work as well. So to sum it up, what I specialize in is helping people to identify their underlying contributing factors to their issues, rather than just treating a band-aid solution, so that we're not just covering things up. So, which is one of the reasons we're doing this presentation today. Andy suggested doing a collaboration, and our techniques combine really well and work together well, and we're all about prevention rather than treating what happens afterwards. So there's been lots of different reactions and to COVID-19 and how everybody's been experiencing it, and we acknowledge the differences, our different experiences. And so we just ask that nobody make any judgment of any feedback that people provide today. It's just, we're all accepting, we're all here to support one another, and this is what it's about. And to start just the topic of conversation, to help people realize that you know, we have a choice when we on the other side, and it's better to start thinking about this now. So today is more of a discussion. And then from here on, we'll, Angie and I are planning on putting together like a little series of regular tutorials online, so that we want to promote on a regular basis from here. So we've decided to call it Coming Out of Isolation. Which path will you choose? There's so much support out there at the moment for being in isolation. We need to start already looking at coming out the other side. There we go. So Angie and I have personally been experiencing isolation quite differently, and it's been changing for me as well. So Angie, I don't know if you want to share how you've been feeling through this time.
Yeah, and originally we were going to ask, you know, everyone to answer this question just by choosing one of those answers and popping it into the chat. But I think it's been really interesting hearing, we've already been having that discussion and hearing that there is quite a wide variety of experiences that people have been having. Personally, yes, you know, for the first 6 weeks or so, I was definitely not enjoying it. I found it intensely challenging. You know, the kids, I have a 4- and 7-year-olds, they're suddenly home all the time. My husband was working from home and he needed the house to be quiet. I had to close down my business, and it was very stressful, wondering how I was going to manage to pay the rent, and was I going to lose the clinic, and yeah, so it was really hard not having, you know, external support, friends, and the regular things that we do. So yeah, it was for me like very, very difficult. Now the children, my kids are back at school and I'm back at work, so things are feeling much more normal, and so I'm much better now. But yeah, I think this is really great process, working through this and thinking about what are the things that made it hard, and what was I really missing, and then putting a plan into place to make sure that, you know, when the circumstances change, I'll be addressing those needs, you know, for the long term. And then Anne had quite a different experience.
Yeah, well, I was really loving being in isolation, like really thriving and really inspired, and was like really focused on my business. I've been working harder on my business, on the business rather than in the business. So that was a great opportunity, and creating lots of new content. But then just in the last 2 weeks, things have taken a completely different turn. It's not necessary that I haven't been liking being in isolation. It's just it's brought up things now. And I think because I started reflecting on, why have I enjoyed this so much? And, I've almost enjoyed it more than working in my business. So it's brought up a lot of emotional things for me. And sorry, breathe. Otherwise I'll get emotional. And yeah, so lots of questioning, even questioning my purpose. So what that initiated that was I was invited to join a different networking meeting, and I started writing my introduction as to what I do and how can I help these people. And then it's like, well, hang on a second. What do I do? What is my purpose? And so I find that I'm now back in a place where I need to come back to the very beginning of why I started my business in the first place. Is it the same as why I started in the first place, or is it evolving? Is it changing? Do I need to start looking at a different target audience? Do I need to start looking at a different way of running my business in a way that I do enjoy? So yeah, big changes for me to start thinking about as well, but it's brought up a lot. So we identify that some people are enjoying it, some people not enjoying it, and some people have been experiencing a whole variety of things. But what we want to essentially acknowledge is that it's okay to feel everything. Everybody's different. Angie found this nice little graphic for us.
Yeah, so it's just like yin and yang in Chinese medicine. But you can be feeling, even when you're feeling extreme, like even when I was having, really terrible days, I was really feeling exhausted and stressed and trapped and worried. There was also, the gratefulness for spending time together and having the privilege to have enough food to eat and, electricity and, all the very basic things. It's like, even in the extremes, like in the yin and yang symbol, there's always the other extreme in there, and they're very fluid and interconnecting to each other. So
yeah, so Angie's referring to yin and yang, which is actually the sort of one of the basic points for Chinese theory, and both the way that Angie practices through traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and me with my kinesiology background, it's also based on Chinese theories combined with the science. So there will be references to those backgrounds, which we will be going to a little bit of the theory today as well, just to introduce you to that and the importance of it and how it helps explain things. So what we wanted to talk about today is that we have two paths forward. Multiple paths really, but we have a choice. And the choice is either to hope that things will be as they were before we went into isolation, and to embrace change and realize that there may be big changes, and just prepare yourself for that as well. But the most important thing is to make a choice, because when we make choice, we've made a decision and we keep flowing forward and making those steps forward. Because in the theories of Chinese theory, again, energy needs to keep moving. So because when we start resisting and creating blocks to things, that's when we start experiencing a dis-ease, a discomfort in the body. And also when we start taking responsibility for our own choices, we become at cause rather than being a victim to circumstance. And so when we're at cause, taking that responsibility, we become more empowered, which keeps us moving forward and motivated and inspired. Okay. So the idea of today is, because both of us and many of the other practitioners who are here today joining us in the talk, we're here to support you because it's our community, and we all want everybody to be their best. And so we want to help you to make informed choices. And to do that, Angie and I are going to create a series of online tutorials, as I mentioned. And in the lead up, we haven't decided, how long this is going to go for, because it's like every day we come up with different topics and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. So we also wanted your feedback as well today to find out what specifically you're having issues with and what problems, and then we can work out which tools that we have that can support that for you. And so even if you don't think of anything today, but you might be inspired and come up with something tomorrow that you might need help with, feel free to make contact with either of us and just send us that note, and then we can incorporate that into what we're doing, as a way of just helping to improve and ease your way forward and back out of isolation. And we've just sort of covered some of the basics of why we're experiencing what we're experiencing, and taking it back to the very basics of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is the needs that one particular theorist has created. I think it's a good example and visually to talk about what COVID-19 has created for us. And with this particular pyramid, everything starts at the very bottom, and you need those foundations to be solid before you can move up. The theory is that we're all striving towards self-actualization, but before we can get there, we have to have our basic physiological needs in place and our safety and security needs in place. And at the moment, both of those are threatened. Which creates that stress, and then stress is the initiating point of blocks in our energy systems. Angie, did you want to mention anything else about stress at this point?
I'll wait till the next slide.
So next is our Chinese 5-element theory. And most of you would have heard about 5 elements. There's also another version which is 4 elements, but in the Chinese we work with 5. So you start with the yin and yang symbol, which is on the left. So that is looking for that balance and duality in life. So for every high we experience, there is a low, masculine, feminine, the sun versus the moon. We won't go too much into the theory this time. We can talk about that, not about tutorials. But when you split apart the yin and yang symbol, that's when you get the Chinese 5-element theory in more detail. So within the 5-element theory, we also have that same duality, but it gives us more detail. And it also represents, I call it like the flow of life. You can actually overlay this to any aspect of your life. And there'll be a different pattern for whichever thing you're focusing on. And so everything starts with the wood phase, which is the little leaf. And that's like planting the seedling, or that first sign of stress. Then we have the fire element, where you put fire and effort and passion into it, or you're putting fertilizer onto your seedling. Then in the yellow, that is wood. So the tree or your plant grows to fruition. Then in the white one, which is metal, things start to deteriorate, wind down, disintegrate. That's when we have this depression and grief involved. And then we have the water element, which is where things need to come to an end and be let go before you can start a new way of being. And each one of these also connects into our emotions. There's an emotion assigned to each one of these according to Chinese theory, which means that our emotions and our thoughts get assigned to different organs, and then that's where that blockage and dis-ease comes from. These are then connected to organs as well as meridians. And the idea is that energy needs to keep flowing. And if it's not, then there's a stuckness and a block and discomfort, dis-ease. Okay, I hand it over to Angie now.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful theory. I mean, in Chinese medicine theory, the human body is seen as a microcosm of the universe. So all these patterns that, you can see in every aspect of nature, in every living thing, you can see in us, and it's all about balance and harmony. And so you can see there's very delicate relationships between all these elements, and different correspondences that you can relate to anything in the universe. But also, for the last however many thousand years, the Chinese recognized that emotions could be a significant source of illness, as Anne was saying. And that can be, if any of these particular emotions become too excessive, or if they're heightened for a prolonged period of time. And I think that's what we're seeing at the moment. We have heightened emotions. Not only have they been heightened, but they're extended, or we're having sort of elevated emotional sort of symptoms or realities, and they're being prolonged. So it's really important to acknowledge that, and to acknowledge that emotional imbalances can cause physical imbalances and physical disharmony. And so to acknowledge whatever extreme sort of prolonged sense of emotion, whether it's like for many people there's the shock and the grief and the worry, or you know, like, or for some of you were saying you're feeling really worried about going back. So it's sort of like there's you know, that's another emotion that needs looking at and sort of resolving those and calming those emotional extremes will help to bring things back into balance. So it's always a starting point in Chinese medicine.
Great, thanks. And just on a note on that prolonged effect of stress, I recently wrote a professional paper for an association, and I've been seeing a lot of, what initiated my paper was that I've been seeing a lot of clients who are around the age of 47, all coming up with major symptoms, which actually came online for them at age 3. So I started looking back at what happened back in 1973, 1975. And so what happened then was an unstabling of the political system. So the Gough Whitlam government was fired by the Queen. And so this is the first time in world history that something like that had happened, and it created a lot of instability in the economy. It was also when colour TV was introduced. So a lot of people as children, we just soak up all this energy from other people, our parents' emotions, you know, their uncertainty. So as a child, the kids, they were experiencing their parents' stress and not knowing what was going on, and seeing all these not beautiful, but the colour visuals as well, which then provides an imprint onto the mind. And so the children have been essentially then affected, and it's now like 45 years later, and they're still experiencing symptoms from there, not having known that they took on a major stress, a prolonged stress at that time. So yeah, it can have long-term effects, and that's why it's important to be preventative and deal with your emotions as they come, rather than trying to bottle them up or suppress them in any way. Okay, and this a diagram I've put in is just a picture of meridians and where they lie. So these connect in with the Chinese 5-element theories, and the colours connect. So for example, the yellow lines for wood. This is just to help you picture where our meridian systems are, just for little exercises that we're going to do coming up. So these also have yin and yang. So all the feminine, the yin meridians have an energy flow that goes upwards, and all the yang, the masculine ones, all flow downwards. And so we want them to be flowing in the correct direction for their optimal flow, as well as communicating with one another and connecting at those endpoints. Okay, now, so just coming back now to our heart center, because stress, and when we are stressed, we start to block off energetically our heart, and our lungs are very much connected to one another, and they also have an energetic relationship together. Well, physically, scientifically, the nerve endings actually come out of the same vertebrae in the spine. When we get stressed, we sometimes find that we start getting a tightness across the chest. As I was yesterday I had a really bad emotional day, and yeah, I had to sort of force myself to breathe again, because my lungs just wanted to restrict, because I was feeling a lot of heartache and grief. And our heart is essentially the gateway to our soul, and so what we want coming out of isolation is to be able to breathe again, breathe new life, be in flow, and essentially be our best, and let our heart sing and have passion and drive to move forward. So we can use our breath to help calm down our nervous system as well, because when our stress can sometimes try and think how to explain this. So it works in two different directions. When we get stressed, our lung capacity starts to reduce, and we sometimes start to physically close off as well, limiting then our capacity to even breathe and expand our ribs. And then our body starts to think we're so stressed that we go into a state of fight and flight, which then starts to affect your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system, which then has an on-flow effect long-term with adrenaline and cortisol, as well as your digestive system, your hormone balance. And because all those things, and also our mental clarity is the other thing that starts to shut down, because the body goes into that primitive reflex phase of just needing to either fight or run or freeze. And so our breath, coming back to the breath and to the heart, is key to be able to allow you to move forward with ease. Angie, do you want to add anything to that before we move forward?
Well, the Chinese always recognize, even though each organ has a different emotion associated to it, the heart is the emperor, seen as the emperor, and it governs all the other spirits and emotions. And there's one acupressure point that I'd just like to teach you, which is CV17, which is right in the center of your chest. So if you just find the tip of your sternum and then measure 4 finger widths, so you just put your 4 fingers together. So measure 4 finger widths up from the tip of your sternum, so the bottom of your sternum. And it's just right, just literally in the middle, like in between your breasts. You should feel a little depression on the sternum. And this is CV17, which is a really beautiful point. It's, you know, in line with the heart and the heart chakra. So it's connecting us to that sense of love and calm and groundedness. It also helps to open up the chest and the lungs for deep and full breaths. So holding that point for about 2 to 3 minutes is supremely calming. And if you just focus on your breath and having an elongated exhale, that encourages the parasympathetic nervous system, encourages that real calming of your nervous system. So that's a nice one that works on both the heart and the lungs. It's just very calming and grounding. And there's so many more tools that we'd love to share with you. I realize that we're running out of time. But that's just it. Yeah, so that's just a very, very short introduction and just one example of a tool that you can use anywhere, anytime to really help when things are becoming overwhelming, you know, whatever the cause.
Thank you, Angie. Is that our 20 minutes? We're almost finished. So essentially, we just want to remind you that there is always a way out and a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's up to you to choose how you move forward. And Angie and I are here to support you in that. So just reach out and let us know what areas you might be interested in support with, and we can then start putting together our series of presentations, which we're hoping to start from the 1st of June. That's the plan. That's we can already, next slide, before I get there. Sometimes you have to let go of the picture of what you thought life would be like and learn to find joy in the story you're living. I just thought that was a really beautiful saying, sort of to round up what we're talking about today. And it's also about being happy with the way the things are now. And Eckhart Tolle talks about the power of now, and realizing, you know, looking at your now and, you know, the positives and the negatives, and really how bad is your situation now, and accepting things even if they are bad, knowing that you can't go back and change things, that this is the way things are now, but you can choose your way forward and the choices that you make. So we have set up the Zoom already, and this is the URL if you'd like to just go ahead and register now, and just so that you get the reminders for when it's going to start. And we will also be, once we've done them on Zoom, we'll also then upload them to the Quan Yin Healing Centre's Facebook page, as well as probably our own individual pages as well. As just pictures of our clinic. And for those that haven't been there before, we have beautiful blossoms in our reception and a picture of Quan Yin, who is the Chinese goddess of healing and well-being. And we always have magazines, or maybe not at the moment.
No magazines anymore, sorry.
So we had to get to COVID standards, so a lot of things have had to go.
It's a shame.
Yes, and then we just wanted to provide some other resources in case you need further support, some suggestions. The Black Dog Institute has some really good information and a COVID-19 self-care plan template. There's some really good apps out there as well to help with connecting back into your heart and calming down. So one app is called Calm, another one is Smiling Mind. Then we have My Life and Headspace and Meditation Oasis. And also people tend to, I find a lot of my clients tend to forget that YouTube is a really great resource. And I use YouTube every single night for meditations to help, especially last night with releasing my anxiety, just so that I can sleep and one of my favourite hypnotherapists is Michael Seeley, and another one is Paul Santisi. So you just put in a search for whatever it is you want, that, you know, hypnotherapy for the topic of emotion that you're feeling, or binaural beats is another great emotional vibrational tool as well. So the sounds start to alter the mind frequencies to help you to calm or, you know, release the emotions of what you're feeling. So yeah, YouTube's a great resource for lots of free tools.
And can I maybe suggest that after this you type some of those things you just shared in the chat box of those names of people that you follow a little bit later?
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And that's it. So if you'd like to find us on Facebook, we're at Quan Yin Healing Centre, and our website as well has links to all of us as well, and our individual businesses too. So thank you for your time today, and feel free to get in touch if you have any questions, and I'll hand back to Kellyanne.
Fantastic, girls. That was so awesome and very, very timely.